Harry, if you just kill the music. Thanks. Okay, well, thanks for coming. It's nice to see so many intellectuals in one place. Right, here's the running order. Lock the doors, no one's leaving. I'm going to read about half the book, and then I'll chat on a bit, and then I'll read the other half. And then when it gets to about Wednesday, you can all go home. I'm only going to read for about 15. Hiya. I'm only going to read. There's 2 chairs here, or unless you know somebody. I'm going to read about 15 minutes, but I'll do it in two spurts. So basically, I'm going to show you the blurb in a minute. Tom's made a nice PowerPoint. I'll do a bit of reading. I'll tell you the story of the book. There's quite a long, protracted story with it. And I'll do a little bit more reading, a shorter reading you'll be pleased to hear. And then I'll just tell you a little bit about the chapter artwork. And then you can ask me as many embarrassing questions as you want. And then at the very end, I'll sit over there where Suki is, and I'll try and tell you things. But what I have got for everybody is, and you can take more than one if you want. I've got the art. You can see the finished book cover there. I've got posters of that made up, and I'll sign it to you and write rude things on it. Whatever you want me to do, I will do on there. Okay, so Ari, can we just roll the blurb? So rather than me telling the blurb, Tom has made you a PowerPoint. Can you see all right there, Bill? Okay, there's a reason why I picked that music there, that Oasis song. I'll tell you about that later. When I talk about the chapter artwork, I'll explain the story behind that music. It's pivotal in the book, but it was more pivotal a long time ago. Yeah, it'll make sense. Okay, so at the start of the book, the main character is called Robert Knight, and when he goes around Europe in 1996, he's 18, but he writes the book a year later while he's at university. So it's written in the first person all the way through. Okay, I stole the money. There's no other way of looking at it. 1 minute I didn't have 28 grand, the next, abracadabra, I did. But I stole it from somewhere that wouldn't really miss it. Not that much anyway. That's partly how I justified taking it. I'd like to tell you where, but that would be more foolish than taxing the money in the first place. No one got hurt, and hopefully no one ever would. I looked on it as an act of God. It had to be an act of God because I came about it so easily. God smiled down on me in a moment of boredom and said, here's 28 grand. You don't deserve it. After all, you're a spoilt middle-class kid who's never really wanted for anything. But fuck it, human life's too short. And I know you won't disappoint me by doing anything sensible with it. The fact I don't believe in God doesn't really enter the equation. Maybe fate was out with Spud and I on that warm June night in 1996, or maybe we were a couple of chances of the highest order who just got lucky and hit the jackpot. If I had thought about the possible consequences of my actions, I would have not taken the money. But it was something innate within me, an automatic reflex that drove me on and formed our destinies that night. It would have been a mad summer anyway, but 28 grand in your back pocket sort of makes you believe, puts you in orbit, blasts you right off. It was the commercial break of the summer before we started university. We'd finished our A-levels at par for the course high school in Didsbury, Manchester. Spud was scraping funds together at his Mac job at the Virgin Megastore. I was killing time until our planned interrailing debacle metamorphosed. My benevolent father had given me the required funding to help alleviate the guilt of leaving us when he was 14 and running off to America to be a programme buyer for NBC and remarrying with a cheerleader. Money can never replace love. We can go part way to comforting you. We had all set to go on our interrailing around Europe for 1 month, but 28 grand sort of changes your plans somewhat. A month could now be stretched with no monetary constraints to 2 months. No need to kill time. Spud had the required funds. We had just won joint first prize in a beauty competition. Collect 28 grand. That's exactly how it felt. So, on 4 or 5 pages later, the main character, Robert Knight, lives next to a family called the Chadwicks. And the Chadwicks have a very successful engineering business in Saudi Arabia. And his job is to go around, because they're out of the country nearly all the time, to go around and feed their tropical fish. So he goes around and feeds their tropical fish, smokes his marijuana watching them. That's what young people do. And he then decides, because he can't hire a car to go around Europe, he decides to take their top-of-the-range Mercedes, Mr. Chadwick's top-of-the-range Mercedes. So he gets a spare set of keys cut, and he forges the documents in the eldest son's name, who was called Anthony. Anthony's away in Canada doing a degree in engineering to take over the family business. So he forges the documents, and in those days, in 1996, you could go into any post office. It's unbelievable, but it's true. You could go into any post office in Britain and get a 1 year's visitor's passport, basically just a paper passport, and all you had to do was show 2 photographs and some kind of proof of date of birth, and you could go around Europe. So you can quite easily, until the November, because they're going away in June, he goes in and forges the documents so he can take the car out of the country. So basically, he's taken the car, but his best friend that he's going around Europe with is called Spud, Stephen Murphy. He doesn't know anything about the car. So the intention is to borrow the car, but as it transpires, that's not a very wise move, because his mum just finds it missing when she goes to borrow a drill, and so it ends up being stolen rather than borrowed. So basically, he's going round to his mate's house. I parked the car outside Spud's house, which was a pretty stupid thing to do, especially if his parents had been in. Luckily, they weren't. Spud's bedroom window overlooked the quiet, leafy street. He saw me before I saw him. He instantly knew it was Mr. C's wheels. I shut the door, half nervous, half Eddie Murphy getting out a flashy car in Beverly Hills Cop. Then I spotted him up in his bedroom window like a Rampton Rapunzel. He was shaking his head in disbelief, incredulation, shock and horror. It was like a mime act through the closed window. His head was shaking from side to side, and you didn't have to be an expert in sign language to know what he was saying. No way. I stood there smiling at him, his negativity feeding me, reverse psychology. The more you can't have it, the more you want it. He left the perch of the window as I walked up the path, and the door opened and there he was, but this time in audio, head still shaking rhythmically. No way, absolutely no fucking way. We've taken a risk with the money already, this is taking the piss. Let's at least discuss it. I know, let's not. His head still shaking like a kitten at a badminton match. I put on a condescending old person's voice, which is never the best approach to get your own way. Let's have a nice cup of tea and a biscuit and discuss it like 2 mature grown-ups. You fail that on 2 accounts. Let's at least talk about it. If I can't convince you, I promise on your life I will take it straight back. On my life, and he pointed at himself, why not your fucking life? Yours is worth more than mine. That seemed to reassure him a little, and the epileptic head shaking stopped. We moved into the living room. Spud sat in the armchair facing the window and I stood by the window. I took a deep breath. I felt like I was on stage and about to start a Shakespearean soliloquy. I'll go first to prison. I don't want any negative comments, only positive ones, thank you. I knew that with Spud you had to relax him or get him laughing if you wanted to get your own way. He wasn't laughing yet. He looked as though he'd swallowed a blue bottle still attached to a turd. Right, I'll start with the bottom line. Life boils down to a few moments, and this, Spud, is one of them. I put a little bit more passion into my speech as though I was convincing myself, which in reality I was. When you are old and dying, and you have nothing to keep you warm but your memories, you will look back at this moment and smile, and in saying, what the fuck are you laughing at, smile? Because, Spud, life does boil down to a few moments of absolute, unadulterated, crazy, hat stand madness. Madness, deeds that make you smile and feel good every time you talk about them, every time you think about them. And when you tell other people, they don't believe you because they think you're twisting their melons. But you know it's true, and that's all that matters. And when you're old and responsible with kids, for example, think of the warmth. Think of the contorted contradictions when you're trying to instill morals in them. And this is one of life's few moments. Because when you're old, you don't do crazy things. You conform. You watch mind-numbing, spirit-crushing game shows. You do DIY. You buy things on the drip. I was quoting from Trainspotting, but it made the point well. It is what you do in your youth that forms your whole life and your future personality. No risk here. What risk there is, I will take it all. I will take it all. I will shoulder responsibilities on these shoulders. And I pointed with my index finger in a semi-ridiculous aircraft cabin fashion manner to try and raise a smile, but not very likely in this present state. You know nothing about it if you like. I'll take the heat. Absolutely nothing. Spud looked past me at the car and then continued shaking his head. I was pleased with my speech. I wanted to say more, but I couldn't think of anything. It summed things up well. There was very little else I could say except to reassure him about the risks, which in retrospect were monumental but at the time appeared minute. It's not only buying a house on the way to madness and renting out a room to King George, it's buying the green belt surrounding, building houses on it and renting out all the rooms and the sheds. This sounded like a negative comment, but it was a step in the right direction. Spud was laughing, at least inwardly anyway. It's not, Spud, it's safe, it's sorted, top drawer, it's on top. I switched back to passionate again. Life boils down to a few short moments and this is one of them. I forged the papers in Daniel's name. Oh, grandma's arseholes, he said with involuntary shock rather than for comic effect. There's no way we can get caught. A second ago it was you, already it's we. I meant me. I'll take all the risks. I had to take more care of the semantics. I wasn't sure where to go next. I thought the life boiled down speech might suffice, but obviously it hadn't. Look, Spud, a few days ago, I wouldn't have even contemplated doing this with you, but after Tony, you've really started to believe in yourself, aim so hoofingly higher. If you don't do this now, you'll be aiming low again, constricted by the constraints of society. Don't start all that shite again. Well, it's true, and if we go on the train, we will come back sad, unfulfilled characters, destined to a low life of self-esteem, poverty and Dickensian misery. It wouldn't have made any odds, but now we've got the car, it makes a whole fucking gigantic mountain of odds. It's like turning back near the summit. Okay, it's mad, I agree with you, but robbing 28 grand is, not turning up for your Mac job is, shagging my sister while your mum's downstairs is. Don't let me down, Spud, trust me on this one. Look at the baby. It goes faster than the Starship Enterprise after a service. Air conditioned like an igloo. It's got the most amazing fuck-off sound system. We can go anywhere we want, any old time. It's the ultimate European fanny magnet. We'll be fighting chickens off with shitty sticks with this piece of German technology. Listen, Spud. I put on a very serious commanding voice. There is no such thing as fate. You make your own fate. Carpe diem. Carpe diem. I raised the passion an octave higher. Seize your own fucking days. Don't leave anything to fate. I returned to the calm, reassuring, friendly. Think carefully before you answer. If you say no, I will take it straight back to the Chaddies. There was absolutely no way I was taking it back. But I wanted him on my side. It was important for European unity. It was important for a single European currency, and that currency was brotherhood. But remember, life boils down to a few moments. Those moments of madness will keep you warm when you're prostrate and your bowels have packed up, when no one can be asked to come and visit you, when your main companions are your memories. Saying yes now will mean a far better and no travel restricted jaunt, more women sucking your dick, you always aiming much higher in life, like Tony for example, not getting trapped by conformity, and most importantly, pleasing me, who after all is your spar and is taking all the risks. Spud stood up and wandered over to the window, focused without speaking or even glancing at me. He stood and watched the gleaming high-performance German saloon in the mid-afternoon June sun. This was probably the hardest decision he had ever had to make, because it was the most upfront, consciously criminal one he'd ever had to make. It shouldn't be imprisoned in a dark, lonely garage. It's our baby now, and it's our duty to set it free, to run with it, to bring it back to life. Spud tried to block me out and focus further on the car and all that taking it might entail. Go with your gut feeling, Spud. Think about yourself in that old people's home, wishing you'd done it. Go for it, Spud. Let your heart rule your head. This once. I started to sing very lightly. Don't dream it, be it. Don't dream it, be it. Spud turned away from the window and walked towards the living room door, then stopped before leaving the room. Without turning, with little apparent emotion, I'll get my rucksack. Then he left the room like a virgin on a wedding night. I shouted after him, go on, Spud, my son, you're reborn. Thank you. Thank you very much. And that's the big reading over. Next time it'll just be a short one. Okay, so basically, this is the story of the book. So 16 years ago, in a tiny 2-up, 2-down near Rusholme in the shadow of the Kippax, I started writing this book on a really old, crappy computer where young people would laugh at now. What was it, Keith? Was it a 386? Yeah, it was an Amstrad. It was a crap. It had 3 numbers, and I think that was the memory in kilobytes of this computer. So, like I said earlier, I wrote it 16 years ago. I finished it in 1997, so it was the year after the book was written. So it's quite easy to write historically, but it's still a lot of research with timeouts and what's the other one, rough guides, because the internet was pretty rubbish in those days. And I wrote to 12 book companies, and one of them was Macmillan. And Macmillan wrote back and said, "Yep, we're gonna publish this. It's great, and get on with writing the second one." I've told you this before. So I just thought, oh, this is easy. It's supposed to be really difficult to get a book deal, so no problem. I'm gonna be a famous author. I started looking for yachts and all that stuff, and so after it was literally about. They kept contacting me and kept saying, "Yeah, it's gone to the next meeting. We're gonna do it." And in the end, they said no. So I was left with these 2 books, and I literally put them on a 3.5-inch floppy disk and put them in a drawer. I know I put it in a drawer, and then obviously did the John Lennon thing there. Life's what happens while you're making other plans, and all the laundry of life got in the way. And a few years ago. About 4 years ago, I got it out again, and the good thing was I had these 2 books, but to be honest, the first one wasn't very good. So what I had to do is I chopped out, in the book they acquired 28 grand, but you never know in this final version where they get it from. But in the original one, I went through how they got the money, which was a bit long and protracted and boring, and how they got the drugs as well. And so there was a lot about that, and I chopped all that out and put it into 2 paragraphs. And that's quite a hard thing to do, when you've spent a long time writing it. So Stephen King does this thing. I don't know if you're aware of this. Stephen King writes a book, and then he literally writes on a manuscript, and he sticks it in a drawer for 4 to 6 weeks, and he lets it ferment, and he comes back, and then he reads it, and then just reads it through, and then he does it again. So I thought I'd do that Stephen King thing, but I thought I'd be a bit trendy to leave it for a decade. And then so I left it, and just recently I was reading an article in The Guardian, and it was by this guy, Mohsin Hamid, and about the reluctant fundamentalist. I know a lot of you have read that book, and in that book, that's also written all the way through in the first person. It's a fantastic book, but I wouldn't have thought there was a great deal of research in that book needed to be done, because he would have known most of that already. He was from Pakistan anyway, so he would have known. And I thought to myself, how could it take you 10 years to write a book? And it's taken me 16 to write this one. And the second one as well. I did the second one again as well, so that's finished as well. So every picture tells a story. This picture here is on my wall at home, and as you go up the stairs, it's on the wall. It's by a Scottish artist called Scott Carruthers, who I actually met yesterday for the first time. And he lives in Perth in Scotland, so I assumed he'd be Scottish. So when I met him yesterday in a pub, he was from Norwich, because I've only ever spoken to him on the email. But the reason why I had his painting was, Harry, if we just go to the next slide. Right, that's the book. And the next one. Right, this is a painting by the same artist, Scott Carruthers. And when I was up in St Andrews in Scotland, and I saw this in a gallery, and it was about 700 quid, so it was quite a lot of money. And I looked at it and I thought it was great, and I just loved it. I just loved the figures, the characters. So Suki said, my wife said, you can't have it, it's too expensive. You're not allowed expensive things. So we went home to Manchester, and then about 3 or 4 days later, I said, I really want that painting. She says, well, go and contact them and get it then. So I contacted the gallery, bought the painting, and then I speculatively just emailed Scott Carruthers and said, do you want to do the cover for these 3 books that I'm going to write? I've written the first 2, and he was very excited by it, because when I spoke to him yesterday, his ambition in life is to do a record cover. So he sort of said, quite tactfully, this is a halfway house. He looked like a guy. He looked like a member of Kasabian as well. So he's from Norwich. He wasn't what I was expecting. I'd seen pictures of him on the internet, so I knew roughly what I looked like, but it wasn't what I was expecting. So I bought this, and he did the artwork, and then when it was finished, the book was finished. He reminded me from me contacted him to him doing it, and he went backwards and forwards to get it finished and change it and stuff. It took 3 years. So that's another thing we're writing. Everything takes twice as long as you think it's going to take. So if you think it's going to take you 16 years, you need to leave it about 32 years. So, Harry, could we just try the next slide? Right, so now, this is the final cover, which I'm going to talk a little bit. Actually, that's the original artwork. So that's obviously different to the book, because a guy that some of you know, John Keane, he changed the name, and he put some sort of trendy adjectives in the end, trendy nouns, so that people will be drawn into it. And then he put all the names of the places where they go to in Europe hanging from here. So you'll see that in a minute. So it basically, between the two of them, this turned it into a fantastic cover. Right, I'm going to do some more reading. Right, so basically, they've stolen the car. They're on the way to Hull, and on the way to Hull, the other character, Spud, has done A-level geography. So he sees the Humber Bridge, and he gets quite excited by it. So this is the Humber Bridge here, for those people that don't know. I'm sure you all know. There's the Humber Bridge. And he gets quite excited about it, and he says, well, we're going to be tourists in Europe. Let's start here in our own country, and let's go and see the Humber Bridge. So they go to the Humber Bridge, and they walk about halfway across, and they're stood in the middle. And as they're stood in the middle, messing about and getting up to a bit craziness to madness, an old woman walks by with a dog, walking a dog, and walks by them. So basically, this is it. This is the bit where they're on the bridge, and basically all you need to know is the woman has walked by with a dog, and they haven't even really noticed it. It's very windy as well. It's very windy up there. Okay. So basically, they see a young. We don't know if it's a young girl, but a young woman on the other side of the railings on the bridge. So the old woman is talking to her in the distance. So they see this and then decide that they need to go and help. I felt like the fat boy at the back of the cross country. I was focused on catching Spud up. Spud was focused on being Captain Freedom and saving the day. It was beyond commendable. It was heroic. Spud was literally the pace setter. I wasn't even in with the medal chance. I took my first clear look beyond the focus of Spud, and at about the halfway point, Spud was slowing like a tiger, assessing the situation. My heart sank and I felt nauseous. I realised a young girl was stood on the wrong side of the railings, and you couldn't get more wrong at this height than that side of the railings. The old woman was pleading, hand raised in a non-threatening gesture. I slowed and eventually arrived at Spud's shoulder. He had also raised his palm in a submissive, pleading gesture. I raised my hand. It seemed like the right thing to do. Everyone else was doing it. We must have looked like the Samaritan 3 degrees. An altruistic urge within both of us told us the old woman needed our help desperately. Not because she was old, the older the better in these situations. She needed our collective strength. She was pleading with her. Naomi, please, just climb back over the railing. The terror resonated in her voice. Naomi was about 17 or 18. Long black hair waved behind her and battered her face occasionally, obfuscating it, partly revealing it, making the whole situation more forlorn and desperate. She was thin and tall. Her hands clutched the metal railing. Her arms were at a 45-degree angle to the rail, and she was ever so slightly leaning out from the safety of what the walkway could offer. She wasn't looking down, but out to sea, past Hull, the jutting jetties of the refineries of Immingham. Like the sea was calling her, the sirens, to her final destination. The rest of the whale shut out. The old woman pleaded further. Come on, Naomi, sweetheart, just climb back over here. She had a calming, lilting, reassuring voice from within the terror of the situation, a grandma talking to her grandchild. She tried again, but Naomi continued to ignore her in every sense of the word. It was like the old woman's voice was merely the wind blowing. The old woman turned to Spud and explained, Naomi is very upset. We had gathered that, but now was not the time for sarcasm. Now was the time for action. But what action we should undertake, we were not sure. We needed to get her back. We need to get her back over this side of the railing, said the old woman. That again made a great deal of sense. I looked across at Spud and he looked mortified, like it was his member of his own relative stood there. I must have mirrored him. Even more adrenaline started to course around my body. When he had arrived, it was up to the old woman to save her and get her name in the papers, but now it had also been handed the joint responsibility for salvation. I tried hard for inspiration. I tried hard to focus on 999 lifesavers, but I must have been out that night. The only image I could muster was from that scene from Lethal Weapon where Mel Gibson handcuffs himself to the geezer on the roof and deliberately jumps off with him. I tried to clear that haunting image from my head, but it was stubborn. We were speechless and clueless, and the old woman helped us out further. We need to talk her back. That helped because I'd seen something of this nature on the bill, but then remembered they jumped and topped themselves. I dispelled mental images and suicide jumpers and returned to reality, which was becoming more unpleasant by the second, especially now she had not climbed back over the railing. From nowhere, Spud spoke. Naomi. The unknown voice calling her name surprised her, and out of curiosity she turned her head. Her hazel eyes were swollen and sunken. They seemed to radiate sadness and abandonment. She was gaunt, showing her cheekbones that would have normally been hidden. Her lips thin, almost incapable of speech. She wasn't beautiful, but she might well have been with a little more flesh on her face. Naomi, my name is Spud. I would like you to climb back over so I can talk to you. Thank you. Spud had carried on the calm, reassuring voice the old woman had, but Naomi looked at him as though he was speaking an unknown foreign tongue. Spud was calm. He had done that old teacher thing of saying thank you, an expected command rather than please, a plead. He was in control enough now to start thinking a little more lucidly, and I had spotted this psychological technique, and that reassured me that my thinking was becoming sharper. She slowly turned away from Spud and faced seawards once more. She looked down at the brown, choppy chocolate water far, far below. Tears formed in her eyes, and the wind blew them back in trails across her drawn cheeks to her ears. When the wind subsided a little, they made their way with gravity, in a weak attempt to get to the water first. Spud took a tentative step towards her. She leaned out further towards the abyss. Angrily she shouted, "No! Leave me alone!" I can't explain very well what happened next. I touched my chest with my hand, a reassuring, innate touch. I felt sick, not unpleasantly sick. A drunken, I'm going to be sick later, oh fuck it feeling. A seesawing movement of the digestive system muscles the wrong way, the kind of vomit that you don't mind because you know you'll feel better afterwards. Spud looked to me for inspiration. Horror flashed erotically across his eyes. Help me save her, Rob. Come on. Help me save her. Help her save her life before she plunges to the most horrendous of deaths, then leaves us marooned, deserted, with the gruesome task of looking over the edge, trying to find her limp, floating body. This was the first moment I thought about her actually jumping, visualizing her dead. She leaned further, looked down and took a deep breath. The realization hit me. She was going. I can't explain it, but from somewhere in the middle of my chest, vomit set off and exploded forth involuntarily, propelling my head and soupy soupy stomach contents towards the floor. It splattered with onomatopoeia. As it smacked the ground, the bizarre social faux pas caused Naomi to turn her head. As she turned, Spud made the unilateral decision to grab her with an athletic, coil-sprung movement, and he had her by the arm. The old woman backed him up and yelled to me for aid. I pulled myself together and complied. We dragged her over the rail, two clumsy policemen at a football match with a hooligan. She never spoke. She never struggled. Go to the next one, Ari. Okay, so this is the book cover by a guy called John Keane, and we decided that we were going to hang these down so people could see the different places that they went in the book, because obviously it's a travel book on the road type of thing, and there's the words in the shadow, so that's different from the original painting. Can we have the next one? That's the sequel. So the book is obviously pretty much finished and the artwork is finished. And in this one, they go around the world. The second one's a love story between these two characters here. So he goes off around the world and you can see they're not quite touching the hands on purpose. That's Spud, that's Robert, and this is someone called Tasmin who appears at the end of the first book. Go to the next one, Ari, please. And the next one. Okay, so in the book, I don't need to show you it because it's going to come up in a minute. Apparently Stephen Morris said that talent borrows and genius steals. I heard Billy Bragg say that once and I thought I'd write it down and put it in a book at some point. It's not in the book, but I've written it over there. So basically with the chapter artwork, if we go to the next one, Ari, thanks. There's a book called Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut. There's a book from the early 80s, and in that book he has lots of things like this. He writes and then he sticks loads of artwork in, but it's all quite, he does it all himself. It's all quite rudimentary, and I read that book a long time ago, probably I don't know, about 30, getting on to 25 years ago. And from that book, this is sad on my behalf, the only thing I can remember from that book, the whole of the book, is this bit here. And here he's talking about, he's trying to show the level of his artistic freedom. And this is an arsehole. So, and that is the only thing I could remember from the book. But even though I couldn't remember the pictures, the pictures stayed with me. And I can't remember the story anymore, but the pictures stayed with me. So I thought that would be great to put pictures in the book. And if they're in black and white pictures, you don't have to pay for them. It's only when they're in colour it gets getting expensive. So if every chapter in this book there is a little drawing, and there's one in particular that I'm not proud of. I've not actually put it up because I thought my mum was coming. I thought my mum was coming tonight, so I didn't actually put it up, and it's too rude. But if you buy the book, you can put it on your wall. To just flick through a couple of slides. Okay, there's the car, there's the Mercedes, that's chapter 1. They're like drugs and money to me. Right, just leave it there for a second. So when Tom did the Blair PowerPoint, one of the chapters is called Cigarettes and Alcohol. That was in between the two bits that I've read, and when they get what they do is they get loads of CDs from Robert's uncle who works in the music business, and his uncle sends him the list of the 10 CDs that have changed music over the last 30 years, and he sends him his top 10 CDs, and they take loads of their own CDs as well. So throughout the book as well, you've got Naomi running through the book, and you've got them doing mad hedonistic things throughout the book, but you've also got music running through the book. But on this chapter that I wrote, Cigarettes and Alcohol, I meticulously went through all the lyrics and I related it, because what they do is they stop. This won't spoil the book, but they stop at a service station, and one of them Robert goes off to get some cigarettes, and the other one, Spud, he's left behind to try and pick one track that sums up the whole holiday and all the times to come. And he picks Cigarettes and Alcohol, but it's one of their favourite songs anyway. And so I related the whole of this part of this chapter. I thought I'd been really clever to Cigarettes and Alcohol. But then I contacted the record company, and for 2 lines of the song, they wanted 550 quid. Yeah, so, I had loads and loads of lyrics in the book, but I had to set them all out. So, for example, another one, Blake Morrison was talking about, the guy who wrote When Did You Last See Your Father? He used 1 line from Jumpin' Jack Flash, just 1 line. It cost him $1,500. So, if you're going to use lyrics in the book, you've either got to be very rich or hope you don't get caught. There's no, and you can use the titles of songs. That's free. But once you start to use even 1 line from a song, then you're in trouble. What I've done, which I think is a bit sneaky, but I don't think their lawyers will say that, I've put extra words in or taken words out, so it's not the exact line. So there is a few lines in, but not many. If we go to just flick through a few more, right, there's the Humber Bridge. That's all we've read. How Green in My Valley? Does anyone know that film? How Green Was My Valley? You need to buy the book just to find out what that is then. And they go on a ferry. That's the custom guy, Jabba the Hutt. Right, that's the one. That's the one I had to censor in case my mum came. And my dad, but my dad was, oh, that's very funny. So there is a rude chapter there that you would find if you read the book. You just flick through a few more. So at the beginning of each chapter, these are the pictures. So they go to Amsterdam. Club heads, they go clubbing in Amsterdam. Gratuitous sex scene. That's another one I'm not quite so proud of. But you've got to put sex in, because when I spoke to E.L. James, she said put loads of sex in, so I did. H is for horrendous. Kit Kat. When you read that chapter, you'll never look at a Kit Kat again the same. That's another one that not quite so bad as the other one. They go to Munich. The story with the heart's quite funny in the book, and that's something that when people say how much of the book is you and how much is made up, I always say 37% of the book is autobiographical. Not that I've ever worked out if it is 37%, but if you say a round number like 40%, people know you're making it up. If you say something like, if you say an odd number, say 37%, people think that you're actually, you've actually really thought about it. Next one, Harry, please. That's in Prague, where they meet a mad character. And in the book, there's only one. If you just go back to the last one. In the whole book, there's only one person that is real, one character that's real, and that is this guy that they meet in Prague called German. His real name is Ian Jackson, and he is the maddest person I have ever met outside of clinical psychology. He is a crazy, and all the stories that are in this book about him are all true. None of them are made up. When you read the book, you will not believe some of what he gets up to, and I know they're true because some of them, I was there when they happened. Next one, Harry, thanks. Yep, that's the home of Chet Budd. Next one, Airy. Just flicking through them now. They have a dispute there about something. We go to Venice. I was quite pleased with that picture. Somebody opened the book and said, "Oh, you're a really good artist, aren't you?" I'm not. I'm just really rubbish. But that one was actually quite good. I was quite pleased with that. Next one, Airy. Thanks. Techno, bloody techno. Yeah, that's in Milan. They go to Nice. That's another very rude chapter. They go to Ibiza. I would advise caution if you're going there. They go to Menton. Barcelona. And see, that's a bit dodgy with the song lyrics there. If Lou Reed, Mick Ronson's not going to contact me, but if Lou Reed does, then I'll be in trouble. Wake up, it's a beautiful morning. That could be another song lyric, I suppose. Sitges, just south of Barcelona. Sonic Boom Boom Boy. I couldn't think of what to draw for that, so I just did that. And then the very last chapter is called Songbird. And that's pretty much it. What's the last one? That's just my contact. I write under that name on Twitter, which is a very new thing for me. People ask me questions and ask me to do things. I'm not quite sure what to do with it. But I am the writing imp. Because my name is Ian M. Pinder. I haven't got a middle name. So when people say, what does the M stand for? I make something new every time. I say metamorphic, as in rock. No, I just make stuff up. But I thought if I put an M in the middle, I'd sound like a proper writer. And also, it would be imp, wouldn't it? And if people remember it. I've talked about the sequel. This last chapter is called Songbird. And I won't tell you why, but I wanted to use a verse of the song and it's Christine McVie that wrote it. So you think it'd be quite straightforward. You'd contact a record company or a publishing company, and you contact Christine McVie. It took me about 4 or 5 months to chasing around the world trying to get permission, and then eventually, I didn't even get a price in the end. I got permission, and then I got an email back saying, yeah, you can do it, it's fine, we'll get back to you with a price, but we have no rights in America, you have to find somebody else. So at that point, I'd lost the will to live, so I didn't bother. Okay, right, I think it's questions and answers now. Right, if anybody's got any questions that aren't too tricky, feel free to ask them. If anyone's got any personal questions they want to ask me, that's fine. Who's going to be brave?
The way that your protagonist talk, he's very articulate, but at the same time he uses language of the time. Is that purposeful? I need to read the book, obviously.
Yeah, because they're 18 when they go around Europe, and they write it when he writes it when he's 19. He's using the language of the time, and he's got an A-level in English, so he thinks he's actually better than he is. But yeah, I mean, some of the words from what I've read now, we talk about taxing things and twisting my melon, and they're all time, words that from the time. And people don't really say, "You're twisting my melon now," do they? But the other thing I did is I made it very episodic. So it's very, very episodic. So because when most people read a book, they read it before they go to sleep. So this is probably everybody. You look to see how long it is to the end of the chapter, don't you? And if you can read to the end of the chapter. So I've deliberately made it very episodic so that people can just read it in short bursts. Anybody else?
16 years.
Yeah.
But then when you came back to it, I mean, how disciplined are you in your work, and how long does it take you to?
Well, when I came back to it, I did 3 versions of it. I came back to it, and the first thing I did was I chopped it down, and I stuck an extra chapter on the end, because in the original version it just sort of petered out a bit. So because I've been on this massive spiritual moral journey around Europe, this enlightenment, I wanted to have a concluding chapter, so what they've actually learned. Otherwise, I just felt you feel a bit cheated if you'd read a book in the first person and then you've not really found out what they think. So I stuck it in for that reason. Then I thought I'd do something like Fitzgerald, Scott Fitzgerald, and put loads of semicolons in it and make it quite literary. And it was just ridiculous, because it's not how a young person, even in 1996, would write a book. So then I changed all that, and then I made it so it was more stream of consciousness. So even when I went back to it, there was 3 attempts to get it done. So if you want to try and make money selling books, you're not going to do it. It's just very, very time consuming. It's a lot of effort. You've got to do it for the art, Lovey.
Yeah, you benefited then by waiting those years, perhaps. Perhaps you're more ready to.
Oh, it's.
A better book,
Oh, I would say it's 3 times better for leaving it for a decade. But I don't know if you can leave everything for a decade and come back to it. You'd have to live for a very long time, Benjamin Button or something, wouldn't you? But yeah, it was definitely much better for the leaving. And also, I think it's nice that it's written 1996, about 1996, because everybody can, a lot of people from the even young to old can relate to that, because the research is all spot on. So there's nothing in it that's not factually incorrect. it's all literally right. Because some people have read the proofs and said, oh, that wasn't out, that song wasn't out that year or this. So I went back and changed all that stuff. Yeah.
I mean, basically, sorry, me again. I mean, it's basically become like not a historical. It's like you wrote it in 1997.
Yep.
The first one. Now it is looking back almost 20 years at the same time. So
Yeah.
There must be an element of that as well. In that you are not that you don't remember what happened, but you're looking at it from a 21st century.
Yeah, I mean, loads of stuff that I'd forgotten that that I'd obviously written a long time ago. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Anybody else?
Your blurb's really interesting. I've never seen a blurb like that. I mean, how did you come up with it? Did you just get sick of trying to write the perfect blurb and then just went for it?
Well, yeah, I just thought that, you've only got a very short window of opportunity to get someone to buy your book or read your book. So I just threw everything in that might attract somebody: sex, drugs, rock and roll, enlightenment, morality, love, relationships, death. Just threw it all in because that's the thought. If you know that's all going to be in the book, it's more. I think you're more likely to read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all definitely in there. Yeah.
Do you need to be over 18 to read this book?
Say it again.
Do you need to be over 18 to read
Oh, you definitely be over. Have you read it? No. You definitely have to be over 18, and you definitely don't want your mum sat in the audience when you're talking about it. No, it's not really a young person's book, because it wouldn't have really worked as a younger person's book, because they're 18. The two lads, 18, they've nicked a car and they're going around Europe. They've got a load of drugs stashed in the under the bonnet, so they're not. It's going to be pretty mad, isn't it? Whichever way you look at it, and they're only out to have a good time. Or what you perceive to be a good time at 18. So, yeah, you have to be over 18. I'd probably have over 21, I would say. Never mind 18.
Surely it's a typical teenager's book. Everybody does things before they're 18. So if it's a book, not probably for when you're 16. You shouldn't be reading it, but you can read it.
I don't know if it is. I don't know if it is a typical teenager's book, because if you were the same age as these guys now, you'd be 33. So if you're in your 30s now, you read that book. It's retrospection, and retrospection sells, doesn't it? People love all that retrospection. So, and it's got sex and drugs and rock and rolling, so you can't go far wrong, can you? But yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's a young person's book. Would read it and think, oh God, I wish I was born in 1978, and I wish I was 18 in 1996. It was mad then. People of our generation say, oh, I wish I was born when I lived through the 60s, because it was mad then, wasn't it? No, I don't think everyone was having a mad time, but it's perceived that it was a mad swinging 60s, and that's what they'll think with that. But the 90s was pretty mad, wasn't it? Especially in Manchester. Apparently. Yeah.
Did you always intend it to be like 1, 2 and 3, the book?
Yeah. I always intended it to be a trilogy, and I always intended, even when I first started off writing it, that they would do this, what they've done in the book I've told you about. Then they would go around the world on a gap year, and then I was just going to do one when they was 30. I had no idea what they were going to do in the book when they're 30, and I've only just started planning that out. I've got all the characters and I've planned it out, and I've started writing bits of it, but I haven't. It's a bit dark because their lives have been a bit too rosy and a bit too easy. So I'm going to make this next one a bit darker, I think. But what was hard about it is when the book company said, Macmillan said they were going to publish it, I'd written the first one. That was easy because it was the year before. But the next book was set in 2000, so that was in the future, and that was quite difficult because it's difficult to work out if you're writing a book about the future. It's almost science fiction, isn't it? People might be talking to each other on pictures on phones and stuff. So, you've only got tomorrow's world to help you, and they always got it wrong, didn't they? So, yeah, the second book was much more difficult.
He talks about train spotting, and he talks about On the Road, which are two great books that have been turned into films. Somebody was going to play Robert, and somebody was going to play Spud in the film. Who would they be?
That's difficult. It's a difficult question because
Any actor at any age and aren't
Yeah, because
they?
y-
But how do you visualise?
in this
it?
book you want them to be young, don't you?
Oh yeah.
And I also deliberately made them educated as well, because in a lot of these first person
They-
rites of passage coming of age, they're what technically called scats books from Russian folk fairy tale. They call them satyrs. I might have that wrong, but this is called scats in literally. And if you're being technical, it's called Bindlungsroman. That's the technical. It's just a German name for coming of age rites of passage, but that's what literary people say. So it's difficult to say who would play them. What I'm looking for at the moment, I'm looking for an actor or two actors to do the reading of the book, and it could be, I suppose, it could be only the beginning, the first 1, 2, or 3 chapters. But I don't know. It's difficult. It'd have to be somebody northern. A couple of guys that I spoke to had very broad Lancashire accents, so he's not. You know, these are Mancunians. You know, these are streetwise, savvy Mancunians, but educated, and a broad Lancashire accent's probably not the best option, is it? It might be, but it has to be somebody who's quite famous. Anybody? Right. Okay, it's just a matter of thanking a few people.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if you had
Yeah.
a picture novel, sort of, as you mentioned, 2 years in the future or 3 years in the future.
Yeah.
How are you getting around all the Manchester references and the culture and that side of things? Because obviously you've got to draw on what you know to an extent.
Yeah. My daughter's here. Yeah, basically, you know, if you've lived through that time, you know what, you know, even if you're not getting up to the madness, you know what the madness is, and people tell you the stories, don't they? And, people told me lots of stories about the madness. But the whole idea of the books was that there'd be an overarching narrative to all 3 of them. So there'd be, but each one being separate as well. So each book is a self-contained novel, but obviously you'd eventually would read all 3 together, and you'd see the whole development of the character over the 12 years. That was that's why when I planned it, it was always going to be when 18, 21, 30, and I don't think I'll do one after that. It'd be quite sad his life at 40, won't it? So. Okay, has anybody got any more questions? Right, it's just a matter of thanking a few people. In the at the front of the book, I've got on the inside cover. See, also I've got, you know, all books have a little trendy sort of adage on, don't they? And I deliberately, as they go through the books, make them a bit more cerebral. And so this one says, we should come home from adventures and perils and discoveries every day with new experience and character. See, most people know that. That's Henry Thoreau. A lot of people know that. It's quite cliched. But that works quite well with the characters because they think that's quite a wise thing to say. But this book is dedicated to the Punjabi princess, which is my wife, because this year most of you know I've given up teaching, and I've worked I have worked hard producing these books, but it's not been the same stress as teaching. I can tell you that teaching 16-year-old adolescent boys in Burnage in Manchester, this is much easier. Also, the person that was a fantastic help in this book, in the acknowledgements, the first person in acknowledgement is Liz Rutherford over here, who did an absolutely brilliant job editing it, proofing it, telling me to change things to be a bit more politically correct. She did an unbelievably great job, so, I mean, many thanks to Liz. Who else should I? Bill and I met a long time ago in teaching a long time ago. Bill's a professional writer, and when we were together, Bill went off to write, and very successful. And